I posted a video about one of the lesser known facts about Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, in which he painted an insult essentially to the Pope into one of the frescoes. And people loved that, and it went super viral, and I think it reached 1 million views, and I was like, what's going on?
All right, welcome back to Creator Generation. This week we are joined by Mary McGillivray. Mary, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Hey, Mary, everyone knows, anyone who's listened to this podcast before, I am terrible at introducing people, so I just throw it straight to you. How about you tell me who you are, what you do, why are we talking to you?
Sure. So my name's Mary. I am a TikToker. Specifically, I make TikToks about art history, which to a lot of people, when I first tell them that, they go, oh, that doesn't make sense. I didn't know you could do art history on TikTok, but you absolutely can. There is a thriving art history community on TikTok. And I've managed to build over 300,000 followers in about 9 to 10 months. I also occasionally make video essays on YouTube, and I work as a professional video editor.
That may be the most concise introduction we've ever received from anyone.
Really?
Most people are like, yeah. Firstly, and always outsources the introduction. And secondly, most of the people are caught a little off guard and then go into quite a ramble about who they are and what
No,
they
I
do.
planned this in the shower this morning first, because I was like, I can't ramble. I have to know who I am, you know.
That's a good point. You do have
Very
to know
good.
who you are,
I'll
but
get
let's
that.
not go that deep yet.
Okay, sorry, too early.
No. Yeah, it's never too early. But there's so much to unpack there, which is awesome. But like the last point you made of like you work in the film industry, in the traditional industry as an editor, right? Like, so maybe let's unpack that briefly. Like what does that mean? What do you do when you're doing that?
Sure. Well, I work for a production company called Balloon Tree Productions, which is in Brunswick East in Melbourne. And I've been editing since I was a teenager. That was kind of my into media production, I guess. That was like a real passion of mine. And I started doing like random freelance-ish jobs, paid and unpaid during like my uni days, and eventually, kind of by luck and chance and knowing people, like landed a job at a production company where we sort of do all sorts of stuff, like everything from corporate work to TV ads, a lot of social media stuff, and on the side from like my day-to-day job there, I've also worked on a lot of other random little side projects, and one of them actually was my into TikTok. Last year, 2019, 2020, I worked on a web series for TikTok that two of my good friends produced, another friend of mine wrote, and I didn't know anything about TikTok before that job. I was just doing the edit pretty much. And I learned so much about the platform just from that, and it really kind of shifted my perspective on what I could apply my skills to.
Well, before we get any deeper in that, that is interesting. I mean, it's funny. One thing is we still call them web series, even though they're going on all these, these different platforms. But it was a particularly interesting thing because it was one of the first series actually ever on TikTok that actually spanned over multiple episodes. It's not just, like a 5-part series. There were like many parts to it. And it actually ended up being really popular.
Yeah, absolutely. So the series is called Love Songs, and they're actually making season 2 right now. I think it's going to be released maybe next month or in the coming months. There's going to be a second season because it was so successful. And it was made on a shoestring budget. The first season, it was like a 5-person crew, a very small cast, and just me putting it together at the post side of things. And it's like a pretty much like a traditional rom-com style, like maybe like a Netflix rom-com. That's the closest genre that I can compare it to, but made specifically for the vertical format, the 1-minute episode format for TikTok. And yeah, there were over 20 episodes, I think, at the end. So, like 20 minutes of content, essentially. And it was, like a really big success, and no one had really done a long form narrative piece for TikTok before. And it came with its own challenges, like how do you get people to watch multiple episodes in order of your show on TikTok, which TikTok is not necessarily designed for that. Well, it wasn't then. Recently, they've released the playlist function, which makes it a bit easier to do that kind of thing. And it also presented challenges around like fitting narrative into 1 minute episodes, which was all down to the like amazing writing and producing team. I can't take credit for any of that part of it.
What you said is like, it's interesting because most people think of TikTok as a very sort of an individual pursuit. You don't really have teams behind you. Like this show did have, a production crew, and it was thought out and it was scripted. And then it had to grow and build an audience and get them to watch consecutive episodes, which in itself is quite difficult. But one of the hardest things is obviously creating that continuity from episode to episode, and that lure from episode to episode that people can watch. Like, if they come in episode 15 or 20, they still have to know sort of what's happening and, be interested to go back and watch the rest. And TikTok isn't sometimes as easy to go back and check the back catalog compared to some of the other platforms. So that would have been interesting, especially from the point of view of an editor who has been more in the traditional space. So can you tell us, like, what was it like being a traditional editor, getting your mind around editing TikTok videos?
Like I've done obviously a lot of work where you have to like squeeze a lot into a short amount of time. Like if you're cutting anything for social media, it's short. If you're cutting even like a TV ad, you have to cram so much into such a short space of time. But there was like this added element on top of the edit for Love Songs, in that it was quite ambitious, in that we made every episode fit to a song on TikTok. Because like obviously TikTok is really sound based, and we wanted to like have like the script writer like deliberately wrote and chose songs and wrote to the song, or vice versa, so that each episode could have a trending or near trending track behind it.
Must have been particularly challenging, I guess, having no TikTok experience, or was it actually a plus so you didn't have any preconceived notions going into it?
I guess for me it was a plus. Like the creators of the show were very much like involved in the TikTok platform, and they knew all the trends, they knew all the songs. I had no idea what was going on at the start. So it was kind of like, just make this fit, make it work. And then just a bit of experimenting with the production team on like, test uploading things. Like, does this work? I don't know. By the end of it though, like I felt very much like I knew how the platform worked, and I knew what, like, the kind of intricacies of getting something to work on that platform if you're going to go to the effort of creating out of app, if you're going to, like, edit externally and then upload.
That's one hell of a crash course on TikTok, like diving head first in. Like, is that something when you reflect on it, that like, maybe not to the degree that you guys went to, but is that something that we would recommend for other people who are curious about TikTok but not on there? Just you got to get your hands dirty. You got to get in there to understand it. Like,
don't do that by yourself. Like for me, it was just like, honestly, like just having that team like teach me things, and their kind of enthusiasm for the platform like rubbed off on me. I should probably drop their names.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like Michelle Melky and Hayley Adams and Elise Adams were the team behind Love Songs. And they've gone on to like make season 2 of Love Songs, and like other content for TikTok as well, other narrative content. And yeah, they've really carved out a really cool space for themselves, doing narrative content on TikTok. But like in terms of like how to like learn how to do TikTok, I think like that was like they knew what they wanted to do, and they were like, this is going to work, we're going to make this work. That wasn't really up to me. Like it was when I started my own page, my own TikTok, that I had to learn kind of again from the start how to do TikTok, because I was doing a very different type of thing to a narrative series. I'm doing educational edutainment content, and it's me in it, and I edit often in app. It's a very different kettle of fish.
I mean, today we're talking obviously about being niche or specific on TikTok, and most people think that that's super hard to do because most of the videos you see from creators do tend to have a lot of variety. But like most of the platforms, when creators are specific or they're focused, they tend to pull a pretty engaged audience. And Love Songs was, I guess, in itself niche because it was a specific a specific series based around the story, and that's already a very hard thing to do, and that worked, right? And there were hundreds of thousands of fans, and it did really well. And there's a second season, and there are other things happening from that, and that's really good. And I'd recommend anyone check it out because it is always good to see this new type of content. But then you went on to do something, again, even more niche in your own area.
Yeah, well, I should I tell the story of how I started making my own content?
Tell the story. We want
Right. I guess like TikTok was on my radar from doing Love Songs, and I enjoyed watching TikTok. And then of course 2020 happened, and I found myself in lockdown working from home, with my study plans to continue with my art history studies delayed indefinitely due to travel restrictions. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think I just said to my friends, I was like, I think I'm going to make some TikToks about history and art history. I just started tooling around and making some content. My friends who made Love Songs were so supportive. They kind of just pushed me. They were like, this makes sense. You're an editor and you know about art history. Just make some stuff. You can make content. Just do it. And they kind of pushed me to stop thinking of TikTok as just a fun kind of joking around type thing. They were like, you should make this seriously. And it took quite a few months to get anywhere and get any good at doing TikTok. Actually, before we started this this recording, I was looking back at some of my earlier TikToks from mid last year, and just noticing how different my presentation style was. I didn't have a presentation style. I didn't know what I was doing. I've never presented before in my life. I didn't have a presentation style. I didn't have an aesthetic. I didn't have structure that I was consistently going back to. I was just trying things out. And then eventually my account kicked off a little bit when the I think it was the medieval TikTok trend happened, and maybe it was September last year or maybe October, I'm not sure. There was a whole trend of people making jokes about medieval period, and I think it had something to do with the COVID plague times type mentality. People were seeing some sort of connection there. That's my theory anyway. But there was this whole medieval TikTok trend, and I was able to jump on that a little bit with some jokes about medieval art and stuff like that. And that helped a little bit, but things didn't really kick off until I posted a video about one of the sort of lesser known facts about Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, in which he painted an insult essentially to the Pope into one of the frescoes, and people loved that, and it went super viral. I hadn't ever seen views like that before in any of my videos, and I think it reached 1 million views, and I was like, what's going on? I have no idea why people are so fascinated with this one little tidbit fact, but that's the nature of TikTok. Sometimes things just blow up.
People do love these little tidbits that, whether it's historical or otherwise, they love these little curious moments, and whether they come from history or contemporary culture, and whether that's a really badass dance move in the traditional stereotypical, I guess, TikTok, or in art history TikTok. I think there must be something in that, right? That you tapped into with that video.
Yeah, totally. I think especially like last year on TikTok, there was like a rise in like educational type content, and in the kind of history humanities area, a big kind of foundation of that was the kind of fun fact video format of like, here's something that you wouldn't know. And often like it's about sort of sharing the same fun facts that people have known for a long time, but kids, like, you know, Zoomers on TikTok, haven't heard before, because they're teenagers and they're still learning about the world. So sometimes you come across stuff and you're like, oh, I already knew that. But, you know, not everyone is lucky enough to have a university education in history or art history. Or not everyone's, you know, been on the planet long enough to like pick stuff up. So if the kids aren't the kids, I'm not that old, but if the kids aren't, you know, watching BBC history documentaries anymore, or like even watching the news or current affairs shows, or like picking up on stuff on public television, because they don't really do that anymore. If they're not doing that, and especially when they're not like, you know, kids weren't in school a lot last year either, there's such a like gaping hole in like, you know, potential for them to learn things and like be curious about things and find out things. And I think that's like really where history and art history TikTok like took off, because there's an innate curiosity in young people to like know more about the world and know more about history.
You say young, how old is your audience?
I don't know how old my audience is. That's one of the difficulties with TikTok analytics, is that they don't tell you how the age demographics of your audience. I know gender. I know my audience is about 80% female, which is unsurprising. But I don't know how old they are. I do know from the occasional time I've like specifically asked them to tell me who they are. Like I've made a couple of TikToks saying, who are you? Please comment and tell me like why you're interested in my content. I'd like to like get to know you. And of course, it's the people who comment, of course, that I know. There's a lot of silent watchers, but I have a lot of high school students, like, and uni students as well, who are studying adjacent-ish topics, or they're really interested in, they love art class, or they love history class, or whatever. And on top of that, I just also have a lot of older people on TikTok as well who comment. I don't know whether they're a louder minority or...
Are you surprised by any of this? Like, I know you went, I like the platform. You've got this really supportive crew of people who understand the platform. You've got like this passion that you want to share of your own. But what were you expecting? Were you expecting to create connection with a whole, like hundreds of thousands of millions of people, or were you just like, what were you hoping or thinking would happen?
I honestly don't know what I was expecting. I think it was like my friends who kind of, they believed in me a lot more than I believed in myself, like to be successful. I don't know what they saw in my shitty early content. They were like, this is going to work. I like, looking back on it, I wouldn't have guessed. But I think like it was really exciting for me in the early stages to like actually make friends on TikTok with people that like I've been against my own will out of university for almost 2 years now, and I've been trying to get back. And I really miss like sort of collegiate type relationships and meeting people and talking about shared interests. I don't have a lot of like real life art history or history friends. I mainly just talk to my mum about this stuff. So like meeting like other art history TikTokers was like the first thing that I was like driven to do in a lot of ways, and like building like a community of actual like friends that like we chat out of app, like we have group WhatsApps and we discuss how our channels are going and how our content is going and fun things that we see in the media about art history. Like that was like what I kind of wanted at the start. Like that's what I was like going after. And then I realized like as I was like figuring out how to make my content better, like I think I'm one of my skills is that I'm good at learning from doing things. So the more I did it, and at one point during lockdown I was making 3 TikToks every day, like publishing 3 a day, which is a lot. And so I just got a lot better at it very, very quickly, essentially. And from then I was like, oh, this could be really useful for not just like what I'm doing right now, not just like to have TikTok followers, but for my future career goals within academia, within the history and art history field. Like I've always wanted to be a history and art history communicator. And I was able to sort of kickstart that, like sort of insanely kickstart it, like in a huge way, through TikTok.
Well, I want to talk about sort of the trajectory of where this is going, but I just want to go back to the area. And obviously you're in art history. And like we said before, a lot of people who make TikTok are sort of very broad and generally entertaining in what they do. Like, you know, they'll do anything. So you're specific, how specific is maybe too specific? Do you find you have enough of an audience in that area?
Yeah, that's like one of the trickiest bits to balance, I think, on like in a niche-ish area on TikTok. I started out making content that was like directly related to my personally very niche art history interests. So like my personal interest, my personal specialty, I guess, in art history is early Italian Renaissance frescoes. Very niche. There's a window of like 100 years. It's one medium. It's found in one part of the world. No one knows anything about this stuff. And like other random bits of interest that I had, like I was mainly talking about like late medieval and early Renaissance European stuff, making jokes. Some people really liked it, like the people who found it and were like, oh my god, I also love this stuff, were like, this is the weirdest, nichest joke about Giorgio Vasari that I've ever heard. I love it, but that's not really mass appeal. Like that doesn't get you many views
all
or
10
many
of you
shares,
are
really.
loving it though, like it was...
Yeah, well, like TikTok thrives off shares, right? So you have to have something that is going to make people want to share it with their friends. And if these other 10 weirdos out there who really love that particular niche like I do, if they're like me, they don't have friends to share this with. So they don't have people that will understand it outside of, you know, their little study area. So I think the tip for TikTokers is always like find a niche, like make a niche for yourself. But I had to like unniche myself in a lot of ways. I think that's also just like a personal thing. Like I'm a very like I like very specific things. I've never been good at pop culture. My friends say I live under a rock. Like I don't watch all the movies. Like I haven't seen the movies that people have seen. I don't know the music that people talk about. So I had to like force myself to like be like, okay, what is actually going on in the world that people are interested in? How could I tie in my interest in art history to real things that are happening around me, to politics, to pop culture? I started a series called, it was about art history in Harry Potter films, like in the production design. And that did fairly well, like in my early couple of months on TikTok. So like, yeah, finding a way to like get people into art history, or like people who are like slightly already interested in it, but to get them into it through a lens that they already understand. And for me, I had to get broader and start talking about areas of art history that I'm not an expert in, or that I'm not particularly drawn to myself, like Picasso. It was a big draw card, as people now know me as the girl who hates Picasso on TikTok, even though I've never spent a lot of time before TikTok thinking about Picasso.
So, I mean, you're still specific, but you're just you're making art history generally more accessible in what you do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So accessible and like I know that this word is overused, but relatable. Like why should it matter to the people who watch my content? Like I try and think about that. Like why should they care? Like I really want people to care about history and visual culture, but like you have to figure out like a way to convince them that it's important for them to care about it.
And is it possible though, in the minute you have on TikTok videos, to be educational enough, or do you have to go back to generally being entertaining more than really educational, or are you a bit of both?
I mean, it's a bit of both. Like some of my content is just silly because it's fun. And then other bits of my content are like fully researched and like I've triple fact checked stuff because people will do that if you get it wrong. I've also like been watching since last year on TikTok in sort of educational TikTok areas. There's been a bit of a shift in like what people expect from the entertainment education zone, in that the kind of fun fact type videos are kind of, there's like maybe a bit of oversaturation of them in the marketplace of TikTok. And now when people want to learn and be entertained on TikTok, they tend to gravitate more to how-tos, like tutorials or like videos that give you information, but information that you can use that's to your advantage. So that's why I started a sort of series of videos recently that's about how to recognize certain art periods. And so it's still like silly and funny. Like it's basically just a series of gags about what art history, what artworks look like, saying that Cubism looks like your Tupperware drawer. That's how you know it's a Cubist painting. But people really seem to really like that content, not only because it's funny and entertaining, but also because there's a part of them that goes, I want to be able to go to an art gallery and know what I'm looking at. And this is a tool for me.
Awesome. How, does this then, do you think this will change the lens how you look through when you can do get back to university study? Like, will it change the lens of like you're sitting in the lecture going, well, we could cover this in a minute, mate. Like, let's get your skates on. Like, will that change the lens of the type of education experience that you'd want or other people might want in the future?
That's a really good question. I think if there's any university lecturers listening, I'm sorry. But they're really I think that it's hard to hold people's attention, and university lectures, I don't know about the university sphere outside of Australia, but there's definitely an issue with people not really paying attention in lectures. In the arts field in particular, especially when you're not going to be you don't have an exam on it. It's not like maybe in the science field where you have to make sure you've got all the information so that you can learn it, so that you can reproduce it in an exam. But in the arts field, people don't tend to take lectures very seriously. And it is hard, people have short attention spans. It's hard to keep people's attention for, an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long lecture. And one thing that I would really like to be able to do in future is help educational institutions and gallery and museum institutions to work on that kind of communication, those skills, and think about other ways to communicate academic ideas and concepts, because it's academia is notoriously slow in making any change in any direction. And while there are certain things that need to stay slow and rigorous, in order to maintain integrity and in order to maintain good research principles, good analytical principles, public communication, I think for the sort of arts culture area in particular, needs to pick up the pace, get a bit more interesting, get a bit more a little bit more fun, and be updated.
And what then is next for you? Where will all this lead?
It's a really good question.
The reason I ask is because a lot of people, when they enter these platforms, they're like, "Oh yeah, I really want to do this, and I want to do this full time." And I'm like, "Okay, but like, what's the like? What is it at the end? Do you want to be famous, which is a terrible way to approach it? Do you want to have make money, build a career?" But I think when most people think about it, it's like they're talking and sharing, talking about and sharing things they love, and that spurs on content. But obviously, there has to be a long-term purpose. If it's a hobby, that's great. But creators of your size who have really good upward trajectory, where are you going to go with it?
Yeah, well, I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and I think like since being able to build a platform on TikTok, I've realized that like my kind of dream of doing public communication for the history and visual culture field is a lot closer than I thought it would be. Like I thought that that kind of career trajectory would be really far down the line, but I was able to kind of kickstart it a lot sooner than I expected. I've always wanted, and I still do want to, and I'm not saying this in that I want to be famous, but I want to have the role in the media that a lot of my like favorite TV presenters that I used to watch a lot as a teenager had. So historians like Mary Beard, who did I don't know, maybe Ant, you're familiar with Mary Beard, did the ancient Roman TV series. You should look her up.
I'll look her up. I have no idea. I'm ready for nerd out on that, though. Sounds great.
She's great. She's a BBC presenter and author, and also an academic. She works at Cambridge. I don't think that by the time I get to that stage, or even now, I don't think that role, the BBC history presenter, is going to be around for much longer. Or it's not going to be relevant, or it's just not going to be interesting to Gen Z. So I don't really know. I can't say where I want to be because I don't think that exists yet, but I want to be the new version of that. I want to have that kind of reach, but it's going to have to be, online, updated for, the internet. We can't just be relying on the BBC or the ABC necessarily to produce content off their own back that's going to educate and inspire people to be interested in history. It's not like we've got to think about new ways to present that, and that's what I want to do.
And look, and clearly, like things like TikTok and what you're doing on it are new ways to present that. So I guess based on that, do you have any top tips for people being specific? Like obviously you talked about, make it accessible, being relatable. Is there anything else you'd say if you wanted to go niche specific, what you should do?
My first tip would be that if you're going to have a niche, it should be kind of obvious to you what your niche should be, because it needs to be something that you actually like engage a lot with already, that you already know a lot about, that you're actually passionate about. You can't really just like shop around for a niche and choose. I mean, maybe you can, but I feel like that'd be an uphill battle. Like it should be something that you already are like, it should just make sense. Like when my friend said to me, like, you're an editor and you know a lot about art history. This makes sense. You should be an art history TikToker. Just like this totally makes sense. Like that's what it should feel like, I think, because otherwise I feel like it'd be really hard to sustain a niche for like a long period of time and to like commit to it, to like build up an audience. You also have to like your audience. Like I love art history nerds. Like I love them. And so I want to make content for them. I want to make content that like they think is funny and interesting. If you are picking a niche out of nowhere, or it's something that you don't know a lot about, then you don't know that audience. Like the audience kind of has to be you in a lot of ways. And like flowing on from that, my second tip on TikTok specifically would be to find people in a similar or adjacent niche to you already and connect with them and engage with their content. Like, you can't really be in a niche by yourself. It doesn't really work. And I don't know whether it's my kind of, whether this is just in my head, but I feel like the algorithm and the connections that you make on the app helps your account. Like, the more you engage with the right type of content that's similar to yours, or, has the same audience that you're trying to reach. This could be completely false. I don't know how the TikTok algorithm works, but I feel like that was what put me in the right side of TikTok, the right algorithm of TikTok to reach those people.
Spot on. That's a good summary, actually, and I think you are actually right. Probably more than you realise. Being specific, but focusing on things you actually love, because it's so much easier to talk about them and be interested and engaging. And it's a platform that rewards authenticity because the audience can see that. So if you genuinely love something, they can see that. And like you said, your fans, your art history nerds, they see the love you have, and they can share that. But Ant, I have realised, just looking at the time, we are nearly out of time. But before we finish, Ant always likes to do this one little segment.
Yeah, totally. So every time we get to do one of these lovely podcasts, every week we ask our guests, where have we gone in the rabbit hole that is the internet? And I like to know where the deep, dark, wonderful, interesting, sometimes scary places have you been that the rabbit hole of the internet has taken you?
So many places. So many. Recently, the most recent strange end of the internet I ventured to was some very, very bizarre train forums. One of my side passions, I love public transport, and not in a weird train spotter kind of way, but just in I love communal access to services. I love the public aspect, and I think trains are dope. But I was recently trying to it's you're allowed to laugh, it's funny. I was recently trying to find a seating plan for a rail a train and a rail line that I'm going on in a couple of weeks, between Sydney and Canberra. I'm outing myself as a massive weirdo right now. I was trying to figure out what the seating arrangements were like on this train, and I couldn't find the website doesn't have the transport website doesn't have any seating maps, and I ended up on a forum. I kid you not, it was from 2007. This very strange train forum where people had posted what looked like the design sketches from the designer of the train as to where the seats were and the numbering of the seats. And I was like, right, okay, now I know. And that was when I had to take a really long, hard look at myself and think, did I need to end up on this train forum? It was 10 o'clock at night, and I'm just sitting there looking through comments from January 2007. That's probably the strangest. Yeah.
Oh gosh. How about you, Ant? What have you been doing?
Mine is nowhere near as strange and wonderful, as interesting as that. But I watched Everest on Netflix, which is it's not a very good movie, about a 1996 disaster of climbing Everest. It went bad, very bad. 13 or something people died. But then it sort of sparked a thing about something I read many years ago, and I went back down into the depths of all of these recounts of people climbing Everest, and for some reason I ended up on a rabbit hole on, I think it was Friday night, just gone for many, I had no intention of even looking at it, and about 4 hours had passed, and I'd read so many different articles that people had written about Everest, and then the trash on Everest, and then I went down, found this group of Sherpa who are now spending every climbing season trying to get the trash off Everest, because there's tons and tons of the stuff left up there, as well as dozens of dead bodies. So it's a weird one, not quite as entertaining, but there's some sort of mountaineering bug in the back of my mind, obviously, and it went, yeah. Fred's probably gone somewhere much more sane.
I've actually gone down a chicken teriyaki rabbit hole on on YouTube trying to find the perfect chicken teriyaki recipe, which is ironic because at the moment I'm on a pretty strict diet where I'm not eating very much. So I think that's what prompted me to look at things I really like. I want to figure out how to make them really well. And I think I found a really good recipe, which is I'm pretty impressed with. But yes, I'm looking forward to trying that. But it was one of those weird obsessive things where I'm like, I need to find this. And then I went after it.
Good to know.
Mary, thank you so much for joining us. That's really fascinating. You're into art, you love it, you've made a TikTok account about it, and it's hugely popular, so congratulations on that. Really keen to see where that goes in the future, so make sure you update us. But thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see everybody very soon.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking.
Create a generation. Look on the mic.